everybody. Welcome to this week's After School Club Make It. My name is Kim. I'm a community learning specialist with Do Space, and we are basically this is part two of our Sewn Circuit plush monster. So if you joined us last week, you will know that this is ultimately what we're making. My little eye fell off. I should have probably fixed him before. But I have a button right here, and inside I have sewn a sewn circuit and to light up an LED so it lights up my little monster's heart, and that is what we are continuing making today. So hopefully we are just continuing on from last week. So if you have one of our kits, our take and make kits, that if you picked one of those up but you have not gotten or you were unable to watch part one, make sure you watch part one before moving on. And you can always watch this part later on Twitch or on our YouTube channel, on our Do Space YouTube channel. So let's get started. So hopefully last week we kind of finished up where we had gotten our templates cut out of our felt, and we had kind of talked about placing, I'm gonna move this guy out of the way, placing where to place our components for our sewn circuits. So just as a reminder, we're basically going to be sewing on 3 sewn circuits today. So 3 sewn circuit components. So we have our little LED light right here. We have our button, and then we have our coin cell battery holder. So one of the things I kind of had homeworked you, gave you homework for this week is kind of figuring out where you wanted your light to go, where you wanted your button to go, and where you wanted where your light, where your button, where your battery holder, where you wanted it to go on your plushie. And if you and kind of outlining where each of those parts were. I believe I outlined mine last week. So I know that for this week I'm going to have my battery holder is going to go in this area. I know that the positive side is going to be on this side. My negative side is going to be on this side. I know this is where my LED light is going to be because I have my plus and minus, even though it's not a very good plus and minus. But so I know that I'm going to have it kind of in this orientation probably, or maybe like that. And then because this doesn't have a plus or minus and our button is not polarized, it's going right there. So whenever I press its little hand, it's going to uh, go right there. So another thing you want to think about, I guess, if you haven't already thought about, is if you want, basically, if the piece of felt that you're sewing on is going to be the top or the front of your little monster or the back. So for my example here, I sewed my circuit on the back. So this is one side. So this would be one side. This is the second side. I actually, when I sewed my sewn circuit, I then kind of sewed my guy together in the fact that I was thinking this was going to be the back, and I know that because this is all of the um, conductive thread. Now, you don't have to do that. I did that. I kind of figured that after putting some fluff in my example, I realized that the fluff kind of sometimes gets in the way, and I have to press down on the plushie itself so the light can shine. And so it's actually going through like basically 2 layers because there's not a hole. So what I'm going to change up for this one, I'm going to make it so that this is the front. So basically, if I were to turn this over, I'm going to make it so that my light, so it's kind of like a little yellow square for the LED component. I'm actually going to turn it around and make it so that it will shine through and like going to be kind of shining through this way. And so this is going to be basically the front. Now, if you orient yourself like orient your light like that, just know that you will see the sewing, but that's okay. If you would like, maybe sometime it can be part of the aesthetic of what your little plush monster looks like. You can always cover up with other pieces of felt. So because I know that this is going to be, kind of sewn like that, which is going to make it a little bit wobbly, but that's okay. I'm probably also going to make my button go downwards as well. So that if this were the front, then the button would be kind of right where my thumb. And so, I mean, you could definitely do it this way. And then when you sew the back, or when you sew it together and the back is on, if that's easier for you, it's going to be just fine. And actually, I might do that. To be honest, I think that's actually what I'm doing. I'm going to keep it so that the buttons is facing upward, and that basically then when I sew this on, when I sew the back part on, I'm going to be pressing the button from the back with like my index finger as opposed to the front with my thumb. So I'm going to keep it upright, but the light, I'm going to be sewing it kind of almost upside down so that it's right up against the felt. So yeah, so hopefully you have figured that out. So we are going to now start with our sewing. So some things to think about with our sewing. I'm going to, before I even get my thread on, there are some things kind of like basics with sewing that I would want to talk about really quickly. So you will need your tapestry needle. Your tapestry needle should pretty easily go through your felt. The nice thing about tapestry needles is that they're, felt is pretty, it's a loose structure, so it's going to be sharp enough to go through your felt, but not so sharp that it will poke your finger too much. And then we have at the other end the eye of our, and I know that my camera's not the best in terms of like close-ups, but maybe I can get it. Oh, a little bit. You wanna focus in on that? Camera, come on. Nope, okay. Anyway, there is a hole, and that's gonna be the eye of your needle. So basically, we're gonna be putting thread through the eye of our needle. And when we're sewing, basically, I'm going to kind of put all my components. Even though I'm going to be sewing my LED light down, so the LED light actually faces the felt, I'm going to keep it upright just for my examples today. So basically, how in terms of how my things are oriented, and it might be a little bit different for yours, so you might have to kind of think about how you're going to be sewing it, but we are going to be basically sewing from the negative side of our battery holder. And at this point, I'm not going to worry about this top hole. Both of these holes on my battery holder are conductive. So I'm going to just start by doing this lower one just to conserve on my conductive thread. And then if you're feeling like this is too loosey-goosey, you can always go back with some non-conductive thread if you have any extra and just sew this component, like sew it down on the holes, and it's not going to affect your circuit working at all. So we are going to sew from here to here so this is our LED. So we're going to be, because again, in our circuits, there's some things that are polarized, some components that are polarized, some that are not. Our LED is polarized, so we need to make sure that our negative side of our battery holder, which will be connected to our negative side of our battery, is touching the negative side of our LED light. And so we'll be basically sewing from here to here. And then we are going to be sewing from the positive side of our LED light to one side, and again, of our battery holder. And again, our button is not polarized. So it doesn't matter which side you have it. It doesn't matter. So just one of the holes, but so we're going to be sewing from there to there and then cutting off. So we'll be sewing from here to here, cutting off, sewing from here to here, cutting off. And I'll explain what that means. And then sewing from here to here and cutting off. Now, we are not going to use one thread. Like, we're not going to be using the same thread and just connecting from here to here and then here to here and here to here, and never going to be cutting off, because we need it to be, we have to think of it as like separate wires. So think of it as like a wire going from here to here, and then a completely separate wire is going from here to here, and then a completely separate wire is going from here to here. And so if we use just one string or one strand of our conductive thread to just sew from, it wouldn't work. It would short circuit. It just wouldn't work. So we have to have completely different pieces of thread. And then, yeah, so, and some things in terms of like how to sew. So we are basically mostly going to be doing what's called a running stitch. And I know this is going to be kind of funky because I'm going to have you guys, like, if you want to practice, if you don't know how to sew, the basic idea of like, and actually I'm going to, do I have my scissors? I'm going to take off a little bit of thread, and you can do this too if you want. So I have a little bit of thread. I'm going to just kind of show you, and in just a second I'll show you how to thread your needle. Oof, that wasn't great. Let me try that again. There we go. So you're going to be doing what's called a running stitch. And basically the one way to do it is like you're going down and you're pulling the thread, I don't know, basically like all the way and keeping until there's like no more thread, and this will make sense, and then coming up. So we can see that we have some thread down here, and then coming from the bottom to the top and pulling it, and I'm holding on to the end, otherwise it would just come all the way through, but, and then going from the top to the, basically from the front to the back, and then back to the front. So this is basically what, oops, and my room light. Okay, just a second. My light sensor went off in my room that I'm in. And so this is basically what a running stitch looks like. And this is basically what you're going to do. So you're going to be coming from the back to the front, from the front to the back. And this is the basics of hand sewing. Now I'm going to pull all of this out, because there's you can do it that way. Another way to do a running stitch is actually kind of just with your needle, going from the back to the front to the back to the front to where you're wanting to go, and then pulling your needle all the way, and I'm going to catch it at the end here. But then you can see it makes, just instead of having to go, you know, pull it all your thread all the way, you know, all the way, you're going to be kind of, some of your threads are going to be kind of long. So instead of, you know, potentially like knotting your thread or whatever, this is a really easy way. And it's just basically with your, because your tapestry needle is long enough, you can easily just bring your needle like this and then pull, and obviously my thread kind of came out, but that's a really another way to like easily do a running stitch when sewing. So I'm just going to pull my thread out of my felt, and so those are kind of like that's going to be the basic. Otherwise we're just going to be bringing our needle from back to the front to the back, and it's going to be kind of this motion like this while pulling our thread. So that's going to be your basic motion, I guess, if you think about it. So should we get to sewing? Let's do it. We are going to need, right now we don't need, even though I was using the black thread, we are not going to be using the black thread. We are going to be using the gray thread. The gray thread is our conductive thread. So you are going to want to unroll or unravel that. And so you should have, I mean, it's pretty long. It's over a foot long. And it's gray, it's conductive, it allows electricity to flow through it, which is great. Our other thread is not, it's just cotton, so it is not conductive. And so we are needing this thread, our gray thread is what we need to use to sew all of our components together. So the first thing we are going to need to do is get this thread through the needle of, or the eye of your needle. Now I just found this really nice hack. I think it's like a little bit of a hack. So, a lot of times, kind of a way to do it is to try and get, so you can kind of see the end of our thread might be a little bit frayed. So basically this one strand of thread is made up of a lot of smaller, probably 3 or 4, 5 maybe, smaller strands that are just kind of twisted together. So you could try, and if it's really frayed like this, I'm going to cut my end off just a little bit, just to give it a nice, good, fresh end. I could try, because my tapestry needle eye is large enough, I could easily, if I just put the very, very end of my thread, of my conductive thread, between my finger, my index finger, and my thumb, and kind of pinch down. So you can kind of see I'm pinching, I'm letting up and then kind of pinching. If I make it so where I'm like pinching it and there's only the ends of my thread, I could eventually try and get all the threads and thread this. It's kind of difficult that way. I do not suggest doing that. Another way that I recently found is that if you kind of fold the end of your thread over, kind of like if you're making a loop, and then you pull down on the two ends of that thread and kind of and then bring your thumb and finger right there in the end. So basically, like if I wanted to, I had this little loop, but now if I try and put that loop instead of the end, which is easily frayable, you can easily bring your thread through. So now I have it threaded. So let me show you that one more time, just because I think sometimes this is like one of the trickier parts. So I'm going to kind of fold my thread over my needle and then pull it down. So like there's basically a loop, but then I'm bringing my index finger and my thumb together, and then where that, like the end of the loop, I'm kind of letting that be my guide of allowing that to go through the eye of my needle. And then that's really, really easy. So there we go. So we are not needing to tie the ends together. What you are wanting to do is just make sure there's a bit of a tail. So basically you're going to have a shorter tail, which this is going to be your tail, and then the longer portion of is going to be your working string, your working thread. So you just want to make sure there's enough of a tail just so that your needle isn't continuously coming off the thread, because then you all have to keep rethreading your needle, and that's kind of annoying. Okay, so the first component I'm going to start with is our battery holder. And I'm going to make it so that if I ever needed to, the opening, basically I have my guy here. If I needed to, I could, get into it, if I needed to like tear open the end and put a new battery, I could. These batteries are going to last you a long, long time. If this dies, then you're just continually keeping which is fine. You could absolutely, it's your pleasure. You can do that if you want. But it just might die quicker. This should last like 1,000 hours. I mean, it's not going to die anytime soon. So like I kind of said earlier, I'm going to be starting with this lower one because it's going to be this lower hole on my negative side. So this side has my positive side, this side has my negative side. I'm going to be starting towards, I guess it's not the lower. I kind of think of this as like, if this is upright, if that's this like, I'm looking at this, I kind of think this is the top and this is the bottom, which is why I'm saying like the top or lower one. So, so if I kind of orient it that way, then I'm going to be sewing from here to, and this is my LED. We're going to be sewing to the LED. And because I know I've already marked it, this is my negative side, it's my positive side, and I'm going to be changing it so it's upside down so the light is facing the felt. The nice thing is the backs of these components also say which side is negative, which side is positive. So I'm going to be sewing from this lower hole, not this top one, but this lower one, to the negative hole of, or negative loop of my LED. So I'm going to move the LED for the time being. And the first thing, I'm actually going to take this off. And the first thing we are going to do is anchor. We are going to anchor our thread. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take my, and basically where I've put this little negative side, I'm going to insert my needle. So it's going from the front to the back. I'm going to pull my thread all the way until, don't pull it all the way through until you have a bit of a tail. Just like this, I have a little bit of a tail, and I'm gonna basically use my thumb of my opposite hand, my non-dominant hand. I'm gonna hold this tail down with my thumb. And then I'm gonna bring my needle from the back to the front, kind of near where I initially inserted my needle, and I'm going to bring it back up from the back to the front. I'm going to pull it all the way. So like if I pulled it so hard, so right now I have my tail, this little tail guy, and my working thread. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be actually kind of like what I was talking about before when we were doing the running stitch, going to be putting my needle from the back to the front, and I'm going to just go from the back to the front, really like just with a little bit, just like that. You can kind of see I have my thumb on my, and I basically have just like with just a little bit of my needle gone right from the back and then back to the front. And I'm going to be pulling my thread all the way through until I have this loop. See, you don't want to pull all the way through. You want to have a loop. You're going to pull it until you have a little bit of loop, and you're actually going to be taking your needle and putting it through that loop. You're going to put it through the loop and pull it tight. Okay, and then we're going to do that one more time. So again, from the front to the back to the front, from the front to the back to the front. We're going to be pulling our thread until we have a loop. We're going to be putting our needle through the loop and pulling tight. And because you've done that twice, you've actually made a pretty good anchor to the felt, and you no longer need this tail. So I'm actually going to cut this tail with maybe a few millimeters, just so there's just like a tiny little guy, just the tiniest little tail, but nothing that could cause a short circuit. Okay, so we have now attached our thread to our felt. I'm going to place my battery holder, and if you need to, like I can tell that my my tail from my needle is getting a little bit low. You know, sometimes it adjusts, so I'm going to pull it so there's a little bit more of a tail so I don't have to keep doing that. But so right now my thread is on the front. It's on top, right? I'm going to be taking my needle and I'm going to be putting it through this lower hole of the battery holder. So through the hole and pulling, and then you might catch it on the leg. You want to uncatch it and then pull it maybe, you know, not super, super tight, because if I pulled it super tight, see how that kind of cinches, and I don't want it to necessarily cinch, but just tight enough. And then from the back to the front, you might have to look, or you might, but I'm going to be bringing my needle from the back to the front and back up outside of the loop. So outside of the loop, because we're trying to wrap the thread around this loop, if that makes sense. So you want to kind of get it as close as you can to this loop from the back to the front. And then again, we are going to be inserting our needle from the front to the back through the loop, or through the hole of our battery holder. And you can even see just now, it's just kind of made a, I can get it to, oh, I can't. It's made a loop around. So now my thread is in the back. I can see that it's in the back, and I'm going to be bringing it again from the back to the front as close as I can outside of that hole of the battery holder, and bringing it, and then one more time from the front to the back inside the hole of the battery holder. So it makes a loop, and then I am going to be one more time. So basically kind of like 3 loops around from the back to the front, outside of the battery holder, outside of it. And now we're going to be going inside that loop. Okay, so now we have a good connection with our conductive thread to our battery holder. Okay, so now I am going to bring this back up from the back, because right now my thread is in the back. I'm going to bring it back up to the front. And this is where you could do the one of 2 ways of like getting, because right now we now need to do a running stitch from here to basically over into this general area. So over, I'm going to say over to the negative side, or to wherever you are sewing to on your LED light. So, I mean, for you, yours could be up here, or over here, but just wherever, but you're wanting it to be basically negative to negative. So this is where you can, I have my thread on top, where you could either do the running stitch where you take your needle and basically, I'm not going to pull this all the way through, but you could technically have it so where your needle is kind of piercing from the back to the front, a little bit like what we did when we anchored it, and pull this all the way through. I'll do that from here to here. Another way you can do it is literally just going down into your felt and then pulling the thread all the way, oops, got caught on our little foot, all the way through. And now my yarn is my thread is in the back. So now I don't want to do this. I don't want to, now my thread is in the back, right? We do not want to come now back to the front. If I come back to the front and go down from the front to the back, I'm going to get a whole bunch of thread and it's going to wrap around, and then it's a big old mess, and you'll have to, I mean, it's not a big old mess. What you would have to do, let's just say, if you did that, let's just do a thing. So if I did that, it's going to look like this. And we don't want that. See how that? And basically how to remedy that is to take off your thread off your needle and then pull the thread back out. But then you need to re-thread your needle, and it's just easier not to do that. But sometimes it's hard and you forget. And so if that's what you need, if you forget and you accidentally do that, not a big deal. It's easily remedied. We'll just say that. I made it seem like a much bigger deal than it was, and it's not. Okay. Okay. So I have it from the back. My thread is in the back. I'm going to come from the back to the front, pull all the way until it's not super tight because again, it could pinch, just taut. So just so there's not a gap. And then from the front to the back. And again, pull till there's no loose thread, and then back to the front. So there you go. That's your basic running stitch. Pretty easy. It's just back to front, front to back. Okay, so now we are going to be, what we're going to be doing, like I said, I'm going to be orienting my light so the light is actually facing the felt. So we are going to be basically doing the exact same thing that we did in the initial circle in this hole of our battery holder. So we are going to be basically just kind of connecting and doing loops around this hole. And we're going to do that a couple, 2 to 3 times. So my thread is at the top, around, you know, yeah, on top. So I'm going to be putting it through the hole, and I'm going to be doubly checking. So I have my little negative, so I know I'm on the right hole. Negative side to negative side. So that's really, really important. Make sure that your LED light, and maybe you're connecting positive to positive. That's okay. I mean, right now I'm doing negative to negative. You might be doing positive to positive. That's fine. You just want to make sure you're doing the right orientation. Otherwise, your light is not going to light up, and you'll have to cut everything out and resew everything, and that's kind of a headache, and you might not have enough thread. So doubly check to make sure that you are connecting the correct polarizations of each of these components. So I have my negative, so I know where it's going to go. I'm going to put my needle through the hole of the LED and pull, make sure that my thread doesn't catch, and pull all the way down. So now my thread is in the back. Same process. I am going to bring my needle up outside of the hole, so not inside, but outside of the component of the felt, and pull my thread all the way up. And then again, bring my needle through the hole, in the middle of the hole of the component. It keeps catching. So I'm going to do that one more time, maybe 2 more times. So outside of the component of the hole, inside of the hole of the component, and then it's in the back. I'm going to bring poke my needle outside of the hole of the component, and then inside the hole of the component. Okay, so now you should be able to see that there are kind of basically loops along the hole of your component. What we're going to do next, we are going to now tie off, and we need to kind of secure our thread so it doesn't unravel all of our hard work. So right now my thread is in the back. I'm going to bring it back up from the back to the front. So now my thread is on the front, and I am going to basically, I'm going to take the point of my tapestry needle, and I'm going to kind of bring it in between the loops that I just made on the component of the thread. So in between the threads and the component itself. So I wish this would focus. You want to focus, please? You're not going to focus, are you? Okay. So basically, let's see. This is my needle. And this is my, the hole of my component. I'm bringing it right in between. So this is like the thread loop. This is the component. I'm bringing them right in between. And so I'm going to bring, underneath 2 or 3 of those loops. And then just like when we initially secured it, we're going to pull it, but not all the way through. Don't pull all the way through. You want a loop. You want one of those loops. We're securing, right? Just like at the very beginning when we were securing our thread to our felt. We want a loop, and we're going to be bringing our needle through the loop. And then pulling tight, 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 tight. And then we're going to do that one more time. So I'm bringing my needle in, basically in between the loops that I made around the hole of the component and the component itself. I'm bringing my needle in between those. I'm going to bring it, my thread all the way through until it has a loop. I'm going to be putting my needle through the loop. Oops. I even made a, ooh, I know it's tight because I have this little loop that somehow, and then I might do it one more time just to make a nice secure. And so I know it's nice and secure because I'm pulling it and things aren't moving. So now we are going to then cut off. And so again, you want a little bit, it doesn't have to be right at the base of all the knots that you just made, but just but you don't also want like an inch. You don't want it out here because if you have loosey-goosey threads, those threads could then move around and cause short circuits. So you want to keep it so there's just the tiniest tail, but that's not going anywhere. So we have that. Okay, so we've cut off and now we have just loose thread again. Happy times. Okay, we're going to be doing this. Basically what we did from here to here, we're going to be doing it 2 more times. So we're going to be doing it from here to here and then here to here. Now, I'm not really sure if we're going to have time to do both of these from here to here where the button is. And then from the button. So we'll see. I'll kind of show you again how to do everything from the LED light to the button. And then after that, your homework may have to be doing the last leg of our stitching from the button to the positive side of your battery. So what we're going to do, we're going to move this battery or the button aside. So now I'm going to kind of turn it upside down, and we are going to do the exact same thing that we did when we secured our thread to our felt. So with one minor change, one little change. Instead of going all like just doing this, what we did, and leaving a tail, because that's what we did the first time, I'm going to pull that all the way through. What we're going to do is we're going to do the little where you bring your needle into the felt a little bit and then out of the felt. So there's just like a little guy. We're going to do that and then pull it through until there's a tail, and then using our opposite thumb holding that down. And then we're going to do the thing where we kind of pinch it up and you have a loop, and we're putting the needle through the loop, pulling tight. We're going to do that one more time. So it's not a lot. You're not bringing a lot of, you don't want a lot of felt. I guess I should have explained this. You don't want a lot of felt like this. You want just a little guy. It's almost like you're folding your felt just a little bit and you're putting your needle through. So there's just a little bit. See, there's not a lot. And then bringing it through until there's a loop. So not all the way through, and then putting your needle through the loop. Whoop, maybe. There we go. Yep. And then caught on his arm. Okay. And then I see that it's not the most secure, so I'm actually going to do it one more time just to make sure. You basically want to make sure that there's not like really movement, if that makes sense. You want to make a nice good knot. Nice good knot. Okay, so now I've made a nice good knot. My felt is, or my thread is secured to my felt. I'm going to be snipping off that tail again so I don't have loosey-goosey tails. Okay, so again, we have our thread secured to our felt. I am going to be, my thread is on the top. I'm going to be putting my needle through the hole of the positive side of the LED light. You can tell there's a little little plus side, so I'm putting it through the hole from the back to the front. Make sure it doesn't catch on its ears, little guy's ears. Okay, and I'm pulling it so there's not loose thread. And then right now my thread is in the back. Again, you don't want to go around. You want to come from the back to the front, to the outside of the hole of the component. Pulling it till it's taut or tight, and then through the hole of the component. And then outside from the back to the front, outside of the component, and then inside the hole of your component. I'm going to do that one more time. Outside of the hole of the component, inside the hole of the component. Okay, and then I'm going to bring my thread then back outside of the hole of the component. Okay, and just like on this side, we're going to be putting our needle kind of in between the loops, of our, that we just made around the hole of that component. So we're going to be kind of underneath them, but not through. We're not putting the needle through the felt at all. At this point, the needle's not going through the felt at all. It's just kind of, we're just kind of bringing it in between the thread, the thread loops that we made around the component and the component itself. And so I'm going to bring them through those loops and pull my thread until there's a loop, and bring my needle through that loop and tighten it. And we're going to do that maybe one more time, I think. And through. If it feels nice and tight and it feels like a knot, then you should be good to go. Okay. So we have now secured our thread to our light. So now we are going to be, I'm going to be keeping so my button is, I guess, facing up. And so I showed you kind of a, I guess, more traditional how to do a running stitch. And now this time I'm actually going to do the way where it's with the thread, the needle. Oh, sorry, my light went out again. Oh, there we go. So just with the needle kind of going underneath, if you can kind of see that. I'm just bringing my needle through, so then when I pull my needle all the way through, oopsies, make sure you have, if your thread, hopefully you had a good tail. I did not. So I'm going to pull my thread now, and you can see how now I've made a nice running stitch that's similar to the one over here. They're a little bit more even. So now I have to redo this. Which the nice thing about, the reason why I gave you tapestry needles is that they have nice big eyes. And so, and they're not like as pointy and sharp. Okay, so these again are buttons. I keep wanting to call this batteries. Our buttons are not polarized, so it doesn't matter how you orient it. So my thread is on top. It's at the top or on front. I'm going to be bringing it down through the hole of the component from the front to the back. And then just like we've been doing, bringing the needle from the back to the front, outside of the component, not inside that hole, but outside of the hole of the component, and then back through the hole of the component, and then bringing it from the back to the front. Of the component, and then back through the hole of the component, and then we're going to do that one more time, back from the back to the front, and then front to the back through the component. Okay, and then we need to bring it back to the front. Okay, And then just like we did on on here and here, we need to, well, and here too. Oh no, just here and here. Here and here. We're doing it here. I'm getting myself confused. We're putting our thread or needle through the whole, I guess we did that here and we didn't need to. I'm silly. We didn't need to do this over here. That was silly of me. Oh well, it's fine. It's good practice. It doesn't hurt it anyway. So we are putting our needle in the loops that we just made around the whole of the component. And then again, putting our needle through the loop that we're leaving and pulling it tight. And doing that 1 or 2 more times. Okay. Okay, friends. So I think I'm pretty good. Mine's tight. If you want to do it one more time, go for it just to make sure it's extra secure. And then I'm going to cut it off. Okay, friends. So we are out of time for today. Just explaining everything took a little bit longer, and sewing always just takes a long time, which is why sewing is going to be the 2 weeks after next week. So your homework is going to be securing and sewing from the other hole of your button to the positive side of your battery holder, and then seeing if it works. So after that, you should be able to put your battery in, press the button, and your light should work. So let us know. There's some things to think about. You might have, if you have any loosey-goosey threads, like for example, a short circuit is when the maybe the wire or the thread from your negative side of your battery, or like on this side, because we have basically that one strand from here to here, right? If there's any strands from here to here that touch the strand from here to here or here to here, then your light's not going to work. It's going to short circuit. So you don't want that. So that makes sure that that's not happening if your light doesn't work. Another thing to look for is to make sure that you have your negative side of your battery holder to the negative side of your LED light. And then basically this from here to here and here to here, that's going to be your positive path. So you just want to make sure your paths don't cross and that your paths are positive to positive and negative to negative. Those are the biggest things. Otherwise, your light should work. So that's going to be your homework for the next couple weeks, is connecting it from here to here. So we are taking a break next week. We will not have after school club next week, which is going to be March. Let me just doubly check that. March 15th through the 19th. So we're taking a break next week for spring break, for school spring break. And then we will resume this on the 24th. So we will then work on our sewing and sewing our guys together and making our little plushie look super great. So yeah, so thank you guys for joining me today. If you need to review what we've already seen, the video should be available on our Twitch. I think it's usually pretty soon after we stop going live, and then it should be on our YouTube account as well, our YouTube channel, here in the next few days. So if you have any other questions, please email me at programs@dospace.org. Programs, plural, programs@dospace.org. Okay, awesome. Good luck with your sewing to your last part. And yeah, you can do it. I believe in you. And we will resume on Wednesday, March 24th. Okay, you guys have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you in a few. Okay, bye-bye.